What's up, everybody? Welcome to the second installment of Michael's Weird Kitchen. Got me a beer here. Today we're going to be cooking chicken livers on the stove top. Very simple thing, but I know a lot of you will say, that's weird. I actually have a history with chicken livers, which I will tell you about. But main ingredients, fresh chicken livers, and I'm going to make a sandwich, so I'm going to include this bread. Matter of fact, we're going to toast the bread, but that comes a little bit later. So, first off, you want to put some butter on the pan. I just washed my hands, so they're not dirty. Just want to put a little bit of butter, just to make things not stick. And of course, you turn on the stove. Wait for that to start swooshing around. But yes, I have a history with chicken livers. When I was a kid, I loved them. And Walmart sold them in the deli. I remember when I first started working for Walmart, when I would go to lunch, I could go up to the deli and buy a pound of chicken livers and some ranch sauce or honey mustard sauce, whatever, dip them in and eat them for lunch. Now, over the years, Walmart has taken that away, I guess. I'm thinking it's because it's just not a popular thing. This generation, Gen Z, just doesn't eat that. They think it's gross and nasty and whatever. All right, so my butter has started to melt and move. I want to swish it around in there. Get it nice and liquidy. But yeah, I think it's sad, man. I wish these kids would dig something like that more, you know? But there is a restaurant out in a suburb of Baton Rouge named Gonzales here in Louisiana. It's called the Country Kitchen. They actually have chicken livers on their Thursday and Friday night buffets. Yes, Country Kitchen, shout out to you guys. I love that place. On days where I can, I live in Denham Springs, which is about 45 minutes away from this Gonzales town. So I don't get to go a whole lot, but when I do, I try to go. All right, got to break in here. It's time to put the livers in the pan. Just pour them in there. Hear that sizzle? Get you a big spoon. Kind of fluff them around in there. Now, as you all know, unprofessionalism is a key here, so I'm going to pick this up. Okay, well, unprofessionalism prevailed. I cannot show you the inside of the pan from the camera, so whatever. Maybe I can do this. Oops. All right. So, we're going to cook that a little bit. Got something in my throat. Now, we're anticipating sandwiches. So, we're going to take this bread. Make sure it's fresh, no mold. Put it in the toaster. You know what? I might make 2 sandwiches. So I'm going to take 2 more. 4 slices. There you go. and I'll start toasting the bread because I want toasted chicken liver sandwiches. All right. And you just keep moving it around in the pan as you're cooking it, you know. So anyway, getting back to what I was saying. I live in Denham Springs, Louisiana, which is about 45 minutes away from Gonzales. You have to drive through Baton Rouge, then through a town called Prairieville, then you get to Gonzales. Unless there's some secret back ways I don't know about. But anyway, my brother Christopher lives out there, so I like to go see him on occasion, and I use that as an excuse to maybe have a lunch at the Country Kitchen while they're open. It's a very unique restaurant. They're only open from 10:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. on weekdays and Sundays. But I'm telling you, they make bank. And they also have a Friday night buffet from 5 to 8. So they're open about 3.5 hours a day and an extra 3 hours on Friday nights. And they're closed all day Saturday. But I'm telling you, every time I go, that parking lot is packed. You can't find a place. They make bank. I went to a fundraiser there a couple of weeks ago, and they made $12,000 in 4 hours. They opened specially from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Scratch that. I'm wrong. I'm stupid. I'm sorry. It was 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. So they were only open for 3 hours, and they made $12,000. You paid for the buffet. It was a special buffet for Hurricane Helene victims. And you paid $15 a buffet. And they made $12,000 in 3 hours. I mean, this place is a gold mine. And you know, I used to think maybe, just maybe, they should open up and be a full service restaurant from like 11 a.m. until, 10 p.m. or whatever. Maybe that's the key to their success. If it's only open for 3 hours a day, you're going to want to try that place. Our toast is ready, but we're still cooking our livers. So I thought that was, maybe that's the key to their success. Don't open fully around the clock. But anyway, chicken livers are on their Thursday buffet and Friday night buffet. So I like to go there on occasion. I don't get very many Thursdays off, but when I do, I like to go over there. As a matter of fact, last week on Wednesday, I went for the Wednesday buffet. That buffet has shrimp stew on it. The way this works is every day is a different themed buffet. It's the same every week, but there's a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday buffet. Each is a different theme, but it's the same theme every week on every day. Thursday is what I call chicken liver day. So, of course, I work this Thursday, but next week I'm off Tuesday and Thursday. So I'm going to try to go on Thursday next week for the chicken liver buffet, and I might go visit my brother. Look at that smoke. Now, yes, I have a sink full of dishes. I apologize to the viewers. My kitchen is not very clean today. My children aren't very good with their responsibilities. When I finish with this video, I'm going to be cleaning it all up. But I wanted to make the video first, because you guys come first. around, keep it going. You want to wait. When you put them in there, of course, they're kind of a purplish, reddish heart color. You want to get them to be as gray as possible. And I would look for a little bit of black, like little edgings of blackness. Then you know they're cooked. You cook them for about 15 minutes. So, new topic. I really appreciate the advice given to me from a friend of mine from Orlando. He used to work on the Shannon Burke Show on Florida Man Radio. His name is Jeff Adams. And, you know, it's weird knowing that Florida Man Radio is no longer on the air in Orlando. I mean, I don't go back until February, so I'm not cruising the AM FM dial from Louisiana. I don't get those stations here. But Florida Man Radio went on the air September 10th, I want to say, 2019. And I fell in love with that station. The way it started was there was a guy on there who, the head runner, head honcho, a guy named Bubba the Love Sponge. He used to work on Howard Stern on his Sirius radio channels. That's how I knew him. He was big in Florida forever. My brother Jonathan moved to Orlando in like 2002, 2003, somewhere in there. So when I would go visit him, Bubba the Love Sponge was on the dial. But he was just a local guy at that time. He wasn't nationally famous, whatever. And he ended up raking up the biggest FCC fine for indecency. So naturally, at that time when Howard Stern had some balls, he thought that would be a great addition to his Sirius radio channels. So he hired him. And he started a show on Howard 101 on Sirius satellite radio. And he was there for several years. But eventually a contract dispute happened and basically he quit. And he wound up back on regular terrestrial radio. Now, in Orlando, he came back around 2015, somewhere in there. I can remember he ended up on 810 AM. I forget the name of the station. But I listened for a couple of weeks, but it didn't last very long. The station went under and whatever. I mean, this literally only lasted like a few months. And then the station went under and that was that. He was gone from Orlando again. Now, he had a home base in Tampa. See, when he worked for Howard Stern, that money built this really expensive studio that was out of this earth. It's got a bar in it and everything. I mean, the studio is amazing. Well, he kept using that for his terrestrial radio show. But anyway, his home base at that time was 102.5 The Bone FM in Tampa, Florida. And in Orlando, he was syndicated to 810 AM. Again, I forget the name of the station. But anyway, there was a big battle with that, and a few years later, he got kicked off of The Bone in Tampa. So he had to find a whole new station. Now, he ended up with a home base at 820 AM. I don't remember the name of that station. But I remember when I would drive through Tampa, I would have to change from 660 in Orlando AM to 820 AM in Tampa. So, but anyway, in 2019, September 10th, with him as the big billboard honcho, the big launch mascot, they launched Florida Man Radio. It was available in Orlando on 660 AM and 105.5 FM. Interesting note, I lived in Kissimmee, Florida, so we couldn't receive 105.5 FM at our house because there was a low power Kissimmee salsa station on that frequency. It was funny because if you got on I-4 on the interstate, once you hit Universal Studios, it started turning into Florida Man Radio. The salsa music started fading out, and you entered Florida Man Radio into downtown Orlando. But 660 AM was a beast. That went all the way to frickin' Gainesville, which is like 2 hours from Orlando. You could pick up 660 AM anywhere in Central Florida. I mean, one time we were going to visit Jess's family in Fort Myers, or actually Cape Coral, and it didn't start going out until we hit Lakeland. So 660 was a behemoth of a signal, but of course it's on AM radio. Kids just don't like AM. I don't even think they like FM anymore, because my kids, they're like, we don't listen to radio, we listen to streaming. So whatever. And they also had a streaming feed, of course. iHeartRadio had a stream of the station, as well as FloridaManRadio.com. You could stream the station there. But anyway, all right. Pause on this. I'm going to turn the stove off. And you're just going to move the stuff around for a while. Let it sizzle, do its thing. But getting back to the topic. So, from 2019 until I moved back here to Louisiana in 2021, I listened to the station on 660 AM. And I would use the stream in the house. It was basically the internet stream in the house, and when I was in the car, 660 AM out in vehicles. I did have a little portable radio I bought for like $4 when the station launched at a Goodwill, just so I could have a radio in the house just in case. Sometimes the internet would go down or the station's stream would go down. I would have an AM radio to pick the show up. I would also use it when I was outdoors cooking on the grill. I had a really nice setup in Orlando, man. I really miss it. Things were great. I had a little AM radio with a great speaker that I could carry anywhere in the house on batteries. I would use it when I was outside cooking. We'd be playing it in the front yard, whatever. I was never without my Florida Man radio. Now, getting back to how the station started. In conjunction with Bubba the Love Sponge being the mascot, a guy named Shannon Burke, who I learned later previously worked for Bubba on his internet radio station on Radio IO, which was a very short-lived venture for him, but he launched it right after he got out of Sirius satellite radio. It was completely uncensored. It was a way to keep him completely uncensored and all that. Now, ultimately, that shut down and he wound back up on terrestrial radio. But that's nor here nor there. So, I had never heard of Shannon Burke before. His show was on in the afternoons, I believe from 2 to 6 at that time. So I tuned in on the first day, loved it. Tuned in the second day, I was hooked. Ever since, I've listened to Shannon Burke every chance I can get. Now, at that time, I was listening every day. I worked from like 7 to 4 in the afternoon, and ultimately his showtime changed up to like 3 p.m. until 7. And I might have missed an hour here or there because I was at work or something, but I listened as much as I could. I was a very big listener. And they launched a service at one time called Open Mics, where this is where tech is funny. You know, it's a little AM talk radio station, but they built an app for iPhones and Android phones. And it was an app, of course, for the radio station. You could stream the station on the app, news, all that kind of stuff. And there was an open mic section where you would record a message and leave it on there, and they would play it back over the air. And Shannon took advantage of this, and he knew how to do it. They did it twice in a show. They checked them, and I started leaving some. Now, I did various things in the beginning, much like anybody else, but I found my niche shortly in. It was leaving little raps, and they loved them. It was great for at least a couple years. It's old hat now, but you know, this guy named Jeff Adams was on the show I'm telling you about. There was another guy named DJ, and there was another guy who's unfortunately he's passed away now. His name was Bubba Whoop-Ass Wilson. Man, he was great, man. It broke my heart when he passed away a year ago. He passed away last Christmas. But those were pretty much the guys on the show at that time. And of course, they held station events in Orlando. I would go to every single one of them. I think I only missed one because I had to go to work, and I don't think I had any time to take off or anything. It was an odd situation, but I had to go to work. But that was just a huge milestone in my life, and I wanted to send a shout out to Mr. Jeff Adams again. I really appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule to tutor me on how to use the internet and do YouTube. But yeah, those are some of the fondest moments in my life. You all know I grew up wanting to be in radio but never got the opportunity. So that was like, I know I didn't work there or anything like that, but that was as close to it as I ever got. I got to interact with people in the radio. And there was even one night when me and my father went to a station event. It was a pig roast in Sanford. And Jeff was there, and we were able to all go out that night, including my dad, have drinks, socialize, and we had a great time. And he even mentioned it on the radio that following Monday. You know, I mean, you know, I don't think I'm anybody. These guys, and another reason why I loved them was the fact that they were down to earth. They didn't have egos and all that. But it's the mere fact of that a little guy like me got to interact with what I consider royalty. I know they're not going to say that. And that's, again, that's alluding to they have no ego. But they are. They're my heroes. They're in radio doing what I want to do, you know? So, anyway, we had a great time, had some drinks, went out with Jeff and some of his friends, got to meet people. It was wonderful. Unfortunately, due to unfortunate circumstances, I had to move back to Louisiana in 2021. We won't go into that. but that is one of the greatest highlights of my life. And it was when Florida Man Radio was really hopping, you know. It was a great place. It was a great station, the best in Orlando, in my opinion. Sadly, just this year, earlier this year, I think it was either May, June, might have been earlier than that. I think it was May. And which was really weird because in Orlando, you know, like I had said, they were on 660 AM and 105.5 FM. They ended up losing the 660 AM somewhere right after I moved back to Louisiana. I'm talking like 2022, something like that. They lost the 660 AM frequency and they were stuck on 105.5 FM, which nobody could get because it was on a small translator only pumping out 250 watts. To a city as big as Orlando with dozens of suburbs, you couldn't pick it up in most of those suburbs. You couldn't even pick it up in certain parts of Orlando. It was only a 250 watter. But anyway, Shannon was kind of beaten by that, and people would call in and ask, how you get the show? Just use the internet. Just use the stream. I don't know what to tell you. So for probably around 2 years there, he was kind of not being heard, and sad. But back in March of this year, I remember the date, March 4th, they moved the station to a big 50,000 watter 103.1 FM. And that was a milestone. People were calling in from Kissimmee, from all over the place, just everywhere where it wasn't previously. And he got a lot of new listeners out of the deal. Because, of course, I listened to it online here in Louisiana. And that was supposed to be a real big deal. Bubba the Love Sponge that morning had people on the interstate, you know, tell us where it cuts off. Tell us where it cuts in. It was so far, it was amazing. Well, that was due to be short-lived. Because by May, only a few months later, the management of the station, JVC, sold the station. They sold it to a Hispanic radio group. It became salsa music. You know. Sad. So it no longer exists in Orlando. Now, they had an affiliate for the station in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. It still exists, but I think the premise of it changed. They kept Bubba the Love Sponge every morning, go figure. Shannon had to work out a new deal before he could show back up on there. And when he did, it was a remote from home broadcast. So it's not the same. And I'm not knocking, I get it, I understand, I know. It's business, things happen. The show is sadly not the same way it was all those years ago. I still listen every chance I can. Unfortunately, I work most of the time while it's on, but after the station went down in Orlando, Shannon launched a Patreon show online. It costs $4.99 a month. That's it. And of course, I'm a subscriber. I will always help Shannon. I will always, he's my guy. I love Shannon Burke. So I will always help out. Unfortunately, I don't even always get to watch those. I just work a lot around the clock while he's on the air. But again, I listen when I can. And luckily on the Patreon, they record and post every radio show. So I'll get to hear it eventually. May not be accurate with the news of the time when I hear it, but that's fine. Anyway, shouts going out to Jeff Adams and everybody. The Shannon Burke Show, Shannon Burke, Florida Man Radio. Yeah, that was a real big time in my life. And I want to give a shout out too to a guy that's also passed on, Scott Ledger. I have a story about him. but I'll tell you in a little bit. Let's get our plates out. I'm going to get a paper plate. The livers are ready. I don't know if you can really catch that. Looks kind of like ground meat with big, like, hearty chunks in it. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. For the show effect, I'm going to pour this on a plate. I got a little on the stove. I don't know if y'all can really see that. And you have your little hearty chunks like this. Luckily my dog is on the floor, so she'll eat the stuff that drops. Then you want to make your sandwiches. Look, I'm going to be eating this, so I'll just pick it up with my fingers. There's a lot more chunks in here than you see. I know it looks like ground meat from one angle, but there's a lot more chunks in here. Got my toasted bread. Should have made it in the Xbox toaster. Oh well, wasn't thinking. But yeah, so getting back to the story, this was probably more like 2020 when this occurred. There was a midday show between Bubba the Love Sponge and Shannon Burke in the first year or two called Dangerous Conversation. The whole premise of Florida Man Radio was to be dangerous, to be uncensored as much as possible. They were still, of course, on AM, FM terrestrial radio, so there were guidelines. But, you know, the joke was, like, there was a billboard in Orlando with Bubba the Love Sponge and Shannon Burke behind bars, jail cell bars. You know, it gives you an idea. They were bad guys. Which is so untrue for the sake of radio. They had some pretty rocky times in radio. But, so the midday show was called Dangerous Conversation. It was two guys, Scott Ledger and Mick Dolan. I ended up going to the radio station to apply for a job there one morning. I remember it was raining. But when I was there, after I filled out my application and all that and did everything I had to do, Scott Ledger, a guy who I had met previously at an event, but I had never gone down to the station yet at that point. So he saw me in the hallway. He says, "Come on in." And the show was going on live. Mick Dolan was in his chair and Scott was fumbling around. He saw me through the door in the hallway, and he's doing this while he's talking, like, blah, 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 signaling for me to go in. So I go in there. I said, some of the staff helps me. I sit in a chair, and I watched them do a good bit of their show. And then when a commercial break came, they went to break, and they all reached over. "Hey, man, how you doing? Good to see you. Why are you here?" I explained I'm applying for a job. So we do all that. There's another station event coming up shortly after that where they had a spelling bee, an adult spelling bee as they called it. And it was hosted by Bubba Whoop-Ass Wilson, who was a part of the Shannon Burke show. And Scott Ledger was there along with Mick Dolan, and they were doing their thing for the station. And Scott offered me a job. He said, "If you can't get a job through the station management channels, you come to me, I'll let you be an intern. And I explained to him, well, that's great, but I work at Walmart. He said, no, you're gonna work when you can. I'm gonna basically, he was gonna give me a shot. He was gonna get me in the doorway. And I was very happy about that. And I ended up buddying up with him for a little while. Sadly, he had an incident. I don't know the exact facts, but he passed away in 2020. Unfortunately, he had an issue with, he bled out or something. I don't know the whole story. I didn't want to get too involved with it with the family because I didn't know him that long, and the family didn't know who I was. So that put that on the kibosh. But for a while I was hurt by that and I was distraught, but I got back on it. That's cool. And of course that show went bye-bye. And I think Ed Till came in after that. A guy named Ed Till, who's also a very good person. I listened to his show for a long time. Shout out to Ed Till if you're watching this. But I have a big history with that station. That was my favorite radio station in Orlando, Florida. And the mere fact, again, that Jeff took time out of his busy schedule a couple of weeks ago to text me on Facebook Messenger and try to offer me all kinds of great advice, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. So, our sandwiches are here. I also have the extra, as I call it, remains. I wish I had all my, well, I got this. You could put your own condiments on it. I'm going to put a little ketchup, which I'm practically out of. I'm going to leave for a minute because I'm going to go look in the refrigerator for some condiments. Let's see. Okay, not much. That's okay. Let's just say you could put your own condiments you like on it. I like ranch and honey mustard. That's a good one. I'm putting ketchup on right now because I don't have either of those. But you could do whatever you want with it. Chicken livers. It's a very universal thing. You can make sandwiches. You can eat them just right after you cook them. You could put them in eggs. Maybe I should cook eggs on here for y'all and mix them together. I'm not going to put you through that. But I think you get the point from this, that you can make all kinds of stuff with chicken livers. And it's very good. Look, heart piece. Fantastic. I know a lot of you Gen Zers think that's nasty and gross, but it's not. Matter of fact, back in like the 90s and 2000s when I was eating it, it was mainly thought of as something that the older people ate from like the 60s and 70s. So I think it's just disappeared because eventually these kids are like, I'm not eating livers. Ugh. All right, so I'm gonna put my bread on this. You know what? I'm gonna do this. There we go. I want a lot more ketchup. All right. So I got a busy afternoon this afternoon. Got to listen to Shannon Burke from 3 to 6 on Florida Man Radio from Fort Walton Beach. I find that interesting. So, like I said earlier, he does the show remote from his home in Winter Park, Orlando, Florida. But if you're driving around Winter Park or anywhere in Orlando, there is no station for it. You're not going to be able to hear it. He's remote broadcasting to Fort Walton Beach, which is up in the Panhandle. That's more my way. If they had a station event in Fort Walton, I could literally get there in about 5 hours from where I'm at. Now, obviously, that's a long ways to drive or something like that. And who knows, maybe one day if I've just got a boost in my gear to go down there and see them, if they're there, well, I might do it. I would have to be off, off of work for a couple of days, but who knows. But anyway, I find that interesting. And of course, we've got the Patreon show, which is really good. I try to watch that as much as I can. I'm a paying subscriber, $4.99 a month. I'm helping you out, Shannon. So, got a busy day. I got to listen to him. I got to clean the house. Got to do all kinds of stuff because I was wanting to put up our Christmas tree today. We've got the tree set up. We've got lights on it, but we don't have anything else on it. So I want to get the tinsel and the ornaments and all that on it. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of Michael's Weird Kitchen. Hope you learn how to make chicken livers. It's really easy. And I'll see you next time.